Don't try to do two things at once and expect to do justice to both. This is the story of a boy who tried. While employed as a moving picture operator in a small town theater, he was also studying to be a detective.
Hello, and welcome to Film Church Radio, the podcast that treats cinema as a religion. It's Sunday, and I'm Lewis.
And I'm Branden.
And we are here to talk about movies. Each week, Branden and I alternate picking a film for us both to watch and discuss. Today, I picked the film, and it's 1924's Sherlock Jr., directed and starring the one and only Buster Keaton. Branden, how are you, brother?
I'm doing good, man. We're
Good.
busting out the Keaton this week.
How long have you been working on that? That's great.
All day. And it's not Michael Keaton either.
No, that's right. No relation.
Man, I wish he was like the great-grandson or something, though. That would be hilarious.
Yeah, just keeping it in the family.
Yeah.
Well, before we jump into the movie and talk about what we've been watching this week, we'd like to thank everyone, of course, who has been listening to the podcast and sending their love for the show. It truly means the world to us both, and we love hearing from everyone. You can find us on all good social media platforms at Film Church Radio, where you can leave us a comment or send a message about the show. We'd also love for you to rate and review the show on whatever podcast service you're streaming from. You don't necessarily have to say great things about me and Branden. You know, we say the great things to each other. So you can just tell us what movies you've been watching, what you'd like for us to discuss, and just hit that 5-star. That sounds good to me. How about you, Branden?
That sounds great.
Awesome. Awesome. So before we get to Sherlock Jr., which I'm super excited to talk to you about, let's talk about what we've been watching this week other than Sherlock Jr.
I actually haven't watched any movies this week at all. Sherlock Jr. was the first thing I watched movie-wise since we watched Wander Darkly, but I've mostly been watching shows. Like, me and my girlfriend have been watching Fresh Prince.
Nice.
All of it's on HBO Max, and it holds up so well. It's such a funny show.
That's good to hear, yeah.
Been watching Pose on season 2 of that.
Nice.
It's really good. How I Met Your Father, watched the first episode.
What did you think?
I don't know. I mean, I laughed a couple of times, but I'm just like, why are we doing this?
Yeah. I mean, when they dropped the first 2 episodes, me and my wife watched it. And I think I mentioned it a few weeks ago that I've been like doing the rewatch of How I Met Your Mother, or trying to at least.
Yeah.
I haven't watched it since it like first aired, and I was like, I want to go back and watch it. And I got to like, I don't know, season 7, and I just gave up. I was like, it's just painful. It's
you got to season 7 and then gave up? Like,
yeah.
I only got to season 7 and then I gave up. That's a pretty long way to go, though.
But for me, who's like a completist, you know, I need to watch it all in chronological order.
Well, that last season though just drug out. It's like they should have ended it the season before. The whole wedding and everything could have been one episode.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. But so my expectations going into this were pretty low, seeing as I was like, it's not as good as I remember it. Like, I used to love it when it first was airing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's not my kind of humor anymore.
Yeah.
Which is like, and the characters seem fine. I mean, I'm glad Hilary Duff's doing stuff, but
it's just weird to see new sitcoms too in today's age.
Yeah.
It's like, it's such an old thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And style, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And then, like, spoiler, at the end of the first episode, they're like, hey, we moved into this apartment from somewhere. And I was like, no, you've lost me.
Yeah,
again.
I forgot they did that.
Like,
and
if
the
you're going to do
on
it,
the wall.
Yeah, exactly. If you're going to do it, like, do it. Don't, like, because already you're in the shadow of it, you know?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. But, yeah, I don't think we'll be watching much more.
Yeah. Also, Boba Fett.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
Yeah. That episode that dropped last night. Spoilers, if you haven't watched Boba Fett, we might talk about it a little bit, and Mandalorian. Yeah. But, last night was the episode where Mando tries to give the gift to Grogu, and we get to see Luke Skywalker. We get to see Luke Skywalker training Grogu. We get to
Yeah.
see Ahsoka with Luke,
Yeah.
which is a big deal. I
Massive.
assume that they're going to actually, in her show, maybe show a flashback of her meeting him for the first time, because
Yeah.
that's got to be a big moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, all this stuff that I did not expect to see until, the next season of Mando. I was like, oh, we're here. Because like even the last episode where Mando was like, yeah, I'm gonna help Boba Fett, but I need to go see somebody first. I figured they would just skip over and he would just show back up and be like, I'm back, and then we wouldn't get to see it till later. But no, they go right into it, and I was like, oh my God. And Luke looked way better than he
he looked
did
great.
in at the end of Mando season 2. So obviously they've been listening to people, and they're like, yeah, we need to do better on this CGI stuff. And man, there were so many good moments. I mean, just him like force walking Grogu along, and then like him with him on his backpack and doing he like did a flip and stuff like he does in Empire with Yoda. Man, it was just it was good.
I feel like these last 2 episodes have just been so good at just filling in those gaps that like people have been speculating about a lot.
Yeah.
Like the last episode that was basically just the Mandalorian, it was talking a lot about like the Mandalorian lore kind of thing, just like this is what we stand for, this is what the Darksaber's about, this is kind of why you have it now, and like the claim is that you could rule Mandalore or whatever. And then this one, it was kind of like, okay, where did Grogu come from? And it was like he was being trained, right, when Order 66 or whatever happened, which I know a lot of people have speculated about, but like we're filling in those gaps now. So I don't know what they're going to do for season 3. If this is what they're just putting in a filler episode for the Boba Fett show, who knows what they got for Mandalorian? Like it's going to be mega,
Yeah.
So yeah, dude, it was. I just sat there with a big grin on my face the whole time. But every time, like, we went to a cutscene, I was like, "Don't go to Boba Fett.
Yeah,
stay here, please. I don't want to cut back."
Yeah,
I
mean, even some of the Boba Fett stuff though was really good in this episode. I mean, I guess actually it was more Mandalorian stuff actually, because Mando goes back to what is it, Mos Espa, to that town, and what's the actor's name that plays like the marshal? I can't think of it right now, but he's always good. And then they introduce this new villain. It's like this, like Clint Eastwood alien thing, and kind of looks like he should be in Pirates of the Caribbean, actually.
Yeah, so he was in the animated Clone Wars a lot.
Oh,
he is like a lone. I hesitate to call him bounty hunter. I guess he is.
Okay, interesting.
But I kind of had a look on Twitter. I know a lot of people, because I haven't finished Clone Wars, a lot of people are like, can't wait for the rematch between him and Boba Fett. So I assume that
that they fought
like
at
somewhere in the history,
yeah,
there was something to do with him and Boba Fett.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to catch up on all the animated stuff.
Yeah, after the show, after I watched it last night, I went and watched an episode where I'd left off, kind of thing.
Yeah,
but I feel, I don't know, it's just so good.
Yeah,
I just want to, it just rekindles that love of Star Wars of wanting to know everything about it.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Can't get enough.
Yeah, dude.
So what else have you been watching?
So this has been like a silent film week for me. I seem to get into these like holes a little bit where I just kind of watch silent films a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Sherlock Jr. I've watched that a couple of times. And then I watched 1922's Robin Hood with Douglas Fairbanks, which is so good. I mean, it's like 2.5 hours long, so it is a bit of a bit daunting to put in, know,
a commitment.
I know we've talked about my kind of thoughts on run times. The shorter it is, the kind of more I'm like, oh, I'm going to watch that. But it's just so fun and like entertaining and Douglas Fairbanks is such a great leading man. You know, you can see why he was so popular.
Yeah.
And then I watched another silent comedy from around the same time as Sherlock Jr. With Harold Lloyd called Grandma's Boy.
Okay.
Basically, he just plays a grandma's boy who's like trying to stand up to a bully. And there's like this tramp that's in the town and he's trying to get rid of him and stuff. And I mean, there's some like good bits in it and it made me laugh. And it's got Harold Lloyd in it, which I like Harold Lloyd a lot. It's kind of like the third silent comedian, but it's I don't. If you don't like that character as much, it's hard to kind of get behind it. If you know what I mean, like the tramp for Charlie Chaplin and the stone face for Buster Keaton, it's easy to, pick up with them. But I don't know, for some reason, Harold Lloyd has never been like the top of my list.
Yeah.
But hey, I want to watch more, so I'm glad that I saw it.
Where do you usually watch these films? Do you like know a film that you want to watch and you just like have it in your collection, you pull it off the shelf, or do you like search out stuff
so
on
like
the internet?
So like Robin Hood, for example, kind of started it all. I've got that on DVD, like an old Kino DVD. I'm not sure if it's still in print, actually. So I pulled that out to watch that because I really like Fairbanks. So I haven't seen it for a few years, so I watched that. And then I had a look at like 1922 as a year, and I saw that Grandma's Boy was like the fourth highest grossing film that year.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, wow, like a silent comedy that isn't Chaplin being like highest grossing film of the year kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's what put me onto that. It's just like rabbit holes. I just kind of go down, research rabbit holes and then find films that kind of, I don't know, connect to it somehow, I guess.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, because, I mean, I'm just curious because I haven't watched a ton of silent films, I would say. I mean, I've watched stuff that, was a part of like film history classes and stuff like that. But, I've noticed the more, like you kind of, to really get into silent films and just older films in general, the more context you have, the more accessible it is, I guess.
Yeah.
Because, just knowing the history around the film or, like if it's an American film, like what was going on in America that year or in the past few years, like what was informing what audiences were reacting to and stuff like that. And same with like foreign films,
Yeah, exactly.
Things going on in the country oftentimes had a lot to do with the film. And if you're just going into it completely blind, then, sometimes it's harder to get into them.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's, Japanese films, for example, is something that I've been trying to watch a lot more of because visually I find them stunning, but there's a lot of stuff that I'm like, okay, like what era are we in even? I'm not even, because they do a lot of period pieces and stuff. So it's hard to decipher. But yeah, I mean, just with anything, I think silent film, if you find someone that you like, I would gravitate towards their stuff first and then kind of branch out. I mean, Fairbanks, actually, it kind of relates to what the film we're watching today. As part of my dissertation when I was at university, I wrote about one of his films that he made, I think, is it 1916? It's pretty early in his career. And it's called Mystery of the Leaping Fish, which doesn't sound that interesting. He plays a Sherlock Holmes type detective called Coke Any Day.
Okay.
Which, already you're like, okay, that's a weird name. But he literally injects himself with heroin throughout the film to solve crimes.
Nice. It's just like his magical super drug power.
Yeah, exactly. And he's got like a little clock on the wall and it says like sleep, eat, drink, Coke. And it like spins round and points to Coke and he like injects himself. It's bonkers. It's so insane. Just like, the early days of Hollywood, and this was just, everybody saw this film, and it always kind of amazes me that this film is made and is still out there and not talked about more. So definitely try and track down. I mean, it's on YouTube. It's like 20 minutes.
Okay.
And it's called Mystery of the Leaping Fish. There's a point where he's on like an inflatable in the sea and it starts to deflate and he injects it with Coke, and then they just go flying off through the water, which always makes me laugh.
Yeah, maybe I just need to watch like all these really short
Yeah.
old films and just take inspiration from them because like the premise of that just sounds like something that would still work today for today's audiences. You know, it would just be
Yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah, dude.
Which
It's incredible. It's incredible. Yeah. I mean, especially like Keaton, like his shorts, especially about 22, 23 time, are just incredible. Like one after another, they're just classic,
yeah.
like classics, you know. So you can't go wrong with any of his shorts.
So this film, Sherlock Jr., do you have a copy of it, or did you?
I do.
Yeah,
Yes.
on Blu-ray. Nice.
Yeah. The English label, Masters of Cinema, put out like 3 box sets, and they're pretty much each one's got 3 films, and I think it's all his like features before he went to
MGM.
Yeah. So I do have it on Blu-ray, and it looked real good.
Yeah.
Say. So
That's awesome. I watched it on YouTube.
Nice.
With not the original music, or I mean, there was no original music back then, but I mean, yeah, I wonder how much the music, like especially with these silent films, because silent films, obviously, for people who don't know, the silent films were shown in theaters, and then they had a live piano player or a live orchestra to go along with the film. And I guess sometimes they send out sheet music, or did they just make up they did send out?
Yeah.
Okay.
So for the Blu-ray that I've got of Sherlock Jr., it like the soundtrack to it is the original sheet music, but just composed by not composed, but like played by somebody else.
Right. Yeah.
So it's the actual music that was sent
What's
out with
supposed
the
to
show.
go? Okay. Cool. So that does make it a little more consistent. That makes sense. That's cool.
Yeah.
So, do you have a pretty big Keaton collection?
Yeah. So I mean, Masters of Cinema have made it really easy.
Yeah.
They put out.
Sorry. Does it have his shorts in there too?
Yeah. So I mean, they put out a whole box set, and I think Kino did as well, of his short film, like every one he made from like his debut on screen until he started making features.
Yeah.
So I own those, and then I own all his standalone features apart from the ones at MGM. But I do have the Cameraman that he made at MGM, which is one of my favorites. Yeah. The Cameraman's really good.
Okay. I haven't seen the Cameraman. Actually, I don't even know, or maybe I have. I don't know. It's one of those things. Like sometimes old films, you're just not like if I have seen it, I've only seen it once.
Yeah,
but sometimes I'll watch something and be like, oh, I have seen this before. You know.
Yeah, Criterion put out a really good thing last year, and it's just it looks good. I don't think it's as good as his like standalone where he had more freedom. But there's some nuggets of really good stuff in there.
Yeah.
So
Sherlock Jr.
Yeah, let's do it.
1924.
The summary for Sherlock Jr., if you haven't seen it,
no, do it.
Is a film projectionist longs to be a detective and puts his skills to work when he is framed by a rival for stealing his girlfriend's father's pocket watch. Pretty standard 20s premise, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got the same kind of, I don't know, goofy vibe to it that you get from a lot of the Charlie Chaplin stuff. I mean, you've seen obviously a lot more silent films than me, but yeah, it's easy to see as soon as this movie starts. It's easy to see why these films were so great, you know?
Yeah,
because they're just so entertaining all the way through.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's all about the performance. It's all about it's all about Buster Keaton, really. I mean, he's just a great entertainer, you know, from start to finish.
Yeah, Buster is my favorite silent film star.
Is he
of all
really?
time. Yeah,
Over Chaplin?
Yeah, I mean, it's different to it's hard to compare them, but
Yeah.
Keaton for me, like as a lover of film and a lover of cinema, like just the way that he, I don't know, uses the camera and like uses these trick shots that a lot are in Sherlock Jr.
Yeah.
I'm just like, he's amazing. Like Chaplin is so good at telling his story,
Yeah.
and the laugh and then the cry sums him up perfectly. Whereas Keaton is just like, this film especially, the first half is like very run of the mill slapstick, done really well.
Yeah.
But the second half like is jaw dropping. How on earth did you get that?
Yeah. I agree with
Like,
that. Yeah. It's yeah, well, yeah, this movie definitely changed my mind a little bit about Keaton because last summer I took this comedy films course and I watched The General and then I watched Gold Rush.
yeah,
And in comparison to those two, like Gold Rush was better in my opinion. Which was Charlie Chaplin. Um and The General, like I liked it, like, and I got, it had some funny parts and stuff. It had, it has, at the time, it was the most expensive stunt
yeah,
ever in a film because basically he crashes an entire train and
yeah,
blows up a bridge. And, but, it wasn't like laugh out loud funny all the way through. I mean,
yeah,
it had its moments. Like he does the deadpan really well in that one. Which is great because the deadpan is basically just, crazy stuff is happening and he just has just this blank face
yeah. The stone face.
the stone face, uh, as things are happening and audiences love that. Like,
Yeah,
apparently he figured that out early on because he grew up in vaudeville. His parents were vaudeville performers and, he grew up on stage basically doing acts where, from what I was reading, his dad would be like talking about how great it is or like how to raise a child up great and, be a good parent and stuff. And he would be kind of mischievous in the background. And then he would turn around and see him and he would like kind of throw him around
yeah,
like playfully. But he would, it would freak the audience out because they were basically doing stunts where he would like, throw him into things or throw him, where it looked like
yeah,
he was injuring him, but he would, they would practice and he would do all these stunts himself.
yeah.
Um,
I mean,
but
to the point where he even had like a suitcase handle stitched into his coat,
yeah,
so his
yeah,
father could like properly grab him and like
yeah,
throw him and stuff. And
which
yeah,
is just insane.
I know. At the age of like 5 as well,
Yeah,
like super young,
yeah.
being like tossed around the stage.
So he was, yeah, he was like, I don't know I was going to say bred for this, but I don't know if that's the
Yeah,
right
no,
word. But like, you know what I mean? Like
yeah,
right time, right place. Like going into 1920 silent film at, I don't know how old he was then. What
yeah,
year was he born? He was born in 1895. So yeah, going into 1920, he's 25 years old.
yeah,
You know, at the height of his performance, being able to perform and stuff, getting out, away from his parents and becoming his own artist and stuff. I'm not sure how he got into film and stuff. I know he was friends with
yeah.
Arbuckle, right?
So he met Arbuckle, who was he was pretty much like Arbuckle at that time, like late teens, early 20s, was pretty much level with Chaplin,
Yeah.
in terms of like box office and comedy greats. And he discovered, I mean, didn't really discover Keaton, but like gave him his chance in films.
Yeah.
And then they made like a lot of his early shorts are with Roscoe, and then he gets his own kind of unit.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was because of Arbuckle that he got his chance.
Yeah, but and like I was saying earlier, like this film kind of changed my mind about Keaton because it just It's way more entertaining, I guess. I just liked it more than The General, I guess. And it's way
Hmm.
shorter for one thing, but he just does so many great things, and there were so many more things, like you said, towards the end of the movie, where I kind of was sitting up in my seat, like, where is this going? How is he
Yeah,
doing this? What's going on?
I know.
This is kind of crazy. But it also starts out really great. Like, it starts out in a
Yeah.
movie theater, which I love. I worked in a movie theater for a long time, so I've got a lot of like nostalgia for that. Um, and he's like this movie theater employee, and he's sitting inside the theater, and he's holding a book, and the cover of it says "How to Be a Detective,"
That's right. Yeah.
which is just right off the bat like is it's a hilarious image.
Yeah, it is.
So it just kind of it's just so goofy right off the bat, and
Hmm.
it lets you know like, hey, we're here to have fun.
Yeah.
We're here to show you a good time. We're here to entertain you. Um, yeah, and there's just so many little things like right in the beginning. Um, the whole scene where he's like uh sweeping trash outside the theater, and he like finds some money and he puts it in his pocket, and then he's like you can tell he's like wanting to go out and buy something,
Hmm.
and then all these people like a lady shows up and like she starts digging through the trash, and she's like, have you
Yeah.
seen my dollar? And he's like, what does it look like? Describe it. and then
And she's
and
like
it's
peeking over his shoulder
yeah,
to
yeah.
look at it. Yeah.
And it's great because I mean, there's not I mean, obviously it a lot was lost after the silent era as far as the way actors perform and the way that
Hmm.
films are told as stories. Cuz I mean, you got title cards coming on the screen to give you dialogue when you need it, but mostly these actors are trying to communicate what these characters are thinking without um, without dialogue. They're trying to
Yeah.
do it like use as little title cards as possible. So when he's saying describe the dollar, she's like this wide. She's using her hands to go this wide
Yeah.
and this tall, and she does some weird flappy thing. Like I don't know what that was about. Like, is
Yeah. I
there a
think it's.
bird on the dollar? Like, um, but you can like he's such a good like you can tell he's been doing this his whole life. Like he
Yeah.
was born on a stage. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? He was born in front of an audience. He's been doing this his whole life. And
Yeah.
he's just so good at communicating what's going on in this character's head without saying anything.
Yeah.
It's crazy to
Hmm.
watch.
Yeah. I think lean on from what you just said, just the fact that in silent film you do get people that tend to overact and kind of, they're all arms kind of thing,
Yeah.
but being a stone face doesn't give him that opportunity.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I like him so much, is he's so reserved. Like everything is very meticulous and his timing's perfect. I mean, that whole scene, as you were saying, I mean, it pretty much starts off with him just getting a piece of paper stuck to his broom
Uh-huh.
and just like transferring it from hand to hand, foot to foot,
I was like,
and
he's
then
Spider-Man.
yeah, and then like, placing it under, and that guy walking out at the right time. Yeah, it's just all timed
Yeah.
and it's so good.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then the other things I love are like the little, I don't know where he lets that character drop. Like when he goes to the girl's house after he's bought the box of, I assume it's chocolates. I'm not quite sure what is in those boxes.
Yeah.
But you see like a shot of the house outside, and he's like skipping to the door. And that kills me. Every time I see that, it just makes me laugh. I'm just like, just imagining Buster Keaton skip is just a
Yeah.
lot for me to handle.
Crap, I forgot what I was going to say.
Do you want to talk about the stunts, the ones that impressed you the most in the film?
Yeah. Yeah, when I guess the movie like really kicks in when he or the plot, I guess,
Yeah.
really kicks in when he decides that he's going to find this stolen watch.
Hmm.
Um that I guess it's this other boyfriend that steals it.
Yeah.
I couldn't
And
figure out
then
who this
pawns
guy
her.
was supposed to be.
Yeah, he was just like another kind of like love interest,
Yeah,
you know.
at first I thought he was her dad, and then I was like, when they were doing the whole scene where he's like brings the other gift and they're like in the room and he's
Yeah.
like touching her
Shutting the
dress, I
curtains.
was like, this is strange. um, but yeah, I'm trying to remember he at one point he goes back to the projection booth and he falls asleep.
Hmm. Yeah.
And then you see him come outside of his body, and then he
Yeah.
walks down the aisle in the movie theater and goes into the movie that's playing.
Yeah.
And then he becomes, they set up a new like mystery where something gets stolen, and then he becomes, they call Sherlock Jr., right?
Yeah.
So he's like
Hmm.
Sherlock Jr. And I love this whole scene where it's like the villain and the butler are like in
Hmm.
cahoots. They've like
Yeah.
stolen, I forget even what it was. It's not a watch this time, but they've stolen something.
Yeah.
And the butler is showing the villain all of the booby traps that he has around the house. And
Hmm.
he's like, I've got this chair where, this big axe is going to fall down if you sit in it. And I've got a little
Yeah.
bottle of poison. And I've got these exploding pool table balls.
Yeah.
And when he like throws that first ball and it like blows up the tree, I was like, what the fuck?
I know, yeah, dude.
Because it's just like so casual. He's like, yeah,
Yeah.
here's my exploding ball. And he throws
And
it
nobody
outside.
heard it.
Yeah. And this whole tree just blows up in their yard. But then like the whole scene where, then Sherlock Jr., played by Buster Keaton, comes in and they go through this whole thing where they're trying to, murder Sherlock Jr. somehow. They like try to get him to sit in the chair and he like almost sits in it. And then they try to give him the poison, and then they try to play pool, and Buster Keaton is just they put the one exploding ball in there, and it's hard to even describe. Like
Yeah.
it's done so well. Like apparently he trained with like a
Mhm.
professional I don't know what you call him, pool person,
Players. Yeah.
pool
Yeah.
player,
Yeah. Pooler.
to do all these trick shots and stuff. So he goes all in. Like he
Yeah.
like all of it is great, and you find out at the end that he actually switched the ball, because they wait till the last second and then he
Yeah.
finally hits the last ball and it doesn't explode.
And I just love his little walk after he's done that. He just does it and then just walks out of frame.
Yeah. That was great. And there was a lot in the film, that I kind of felt like I had just never seen before. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I know George Méliès did a lot of like really short shorts that had a lot of special effects in them and stuff, but I hadn't
Mhm.
really seen a longer film a longer film of this era implement so many like special effects type things in the film.
Yeah.
There's like a scene where he's running on top of a train and he grabs onto the water hose, whatever
Yeah.
it is that fills up the steam engine or whatever. He grabs onto it and then it lifts him up off the train, but then the weight of his body pulls it down and then the water comes out,
Mhm.
which he really did himself, and apparently
Yeah.
he like fractured his neck
Yeah.
and
And just got up and carried on.
yeah.
He had a few days, apparently had a few days out, like from filming after it, but complained of a few headaches, and then that was it.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until years later that they were like, "Yeah, you've fractured your neck."
Yeah.
You know?
It was something like 15 years later. He had no
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that until after I watched the film, but just that stunt in general was like, wow, that was crazy. Like,
Yeah.
how did he do that? Oh, well, he actually did it. That's how. Like,
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, once you find out like that he grew up in vaudeville and his dad threw him around on stage, like he he grew up to be that person. Like he did it his whole life. He had been doing it his whole life.
Yeah.
Stunts were a part of his whole act. So it just makes sense. Um, but the one that really got me, like that took this film from this is fun to watch to, oh my God, this movie is great, was the
Yeah.
whole motorcycle scene.
Yeah.
Was just like he's running away from one of the bad guys. I can't even remember how the scene gets started, but uh, I guess it's like a police officer or something, right?
That picks him up.
Yeah.
It's his sidekick, Gillette.
Oh, okay.
So yeah,
they did set him up earlier. I only watched it once.
yeah,
But yeah, so he picks him up, and Buster Keaton just hops on the front of this motorcycle. I mean, and it's very awkward as far as like he's just sitting on the handlebars
yeah,
of this motorcycle, and then immediately they go through like this dip in this puddle, and his sidekick just falls off the motorcycle, but Keaton is still on the handlebars. And then the motorcycle just goes, and it goes on for so long. Like it just keeps going and going, and they go out of the city, like out in the country. They go over a bridge. They go like all this crazy stuff. And like one of the thoughts that I had while this scene was going on was like, this is somebody who knows the medium that they're in. Like not just like this is film, this is which is a whole nother way to tell a story. But silent film has this speed about it. It's like it's a little quicker. Like that the motions, people's body motions, the way they walk, the way they move, everything is like doesn't look normal as far as the speed of people's motion. And it seems like they use that to their advantage as far as the comedy and everything like that goes. Because as that scene goes on, it just gets funnier and funnier. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And I think they know that it starts to get ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like when you get to the bridge with the gap in the middle, and those two trucks come at exactly the right time, they're passing each other. Like you can tell that they're like winking at the audience a little bit. Like we know that this is like slightly ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so good. And then the bridge collapsing at just the right moment for him to like hit the other side and carry on.
Yeah.
My God. Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, I mean there were so many times in this film where I could just hear the audience laughing. You know what I mean? I was just like, I mean, what a time it would have been to see this movie with a packed audience, like with an audience who had never seen it before.
Yeah. Would have blown your mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I loved all those scenes. And then the part that I just like busted out laughing is when he follows the villain to his like hideout or whatever.
Yeah.
And him and his partner are like searching through the car, and they find like this costume and this this dress in this like round bag or whatever. And then he takes it and he like sticks it in the window. And and then I was like, what the heck is he doing? Like, it made no sense to me. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Because then he just stands by the door and they grab him, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that was stupid. and then a little while later in the scene, he just jumps out the window and threw the bag with the dress in it. And he just jumps into the dress and starts walking down the street like an old lady. And everybody immediately runs outside and they're like, where did he go? And they don't notice the old lady.
Yeah.
I love that part. That was like, that was probably my favorite part because it just caught me so off guard.
Yeah, there's so many.
And it happens so fast. It's just like.
I know. Yeah, I love the way that they kind of take away the wall as well. So you don't miss anything of him jumping out the window. It's not like he jumps through the window and then it cuts to the outside. And it's, I don't know how they did it. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And then there's so many bits that I really like when, like in the beginning, when he's shadowing the love interest, and he's like, just the timing of him like stepping behind him, like pretty much like toe to toe.
Yes.
And like
Yeah.
when he throws the cigarette and he catches it,
Yeah.
smokes
He
it, and then
puts
throws
it
it
in
as
his
well.
mouth.
Yeah. And then like they get to the dip and they kind of pull up and they both like do it at the same time. And even that, like just knowing like cinema as he did, you know, when they turn the corner and then one goes up the like steps and Buster is like already behind him, but you
Yeah.
can't really tell he's behind him because of the way the camera's
Yeah.
you know, there's just so many touches that just shows that he knows a lot about this process.
Yeah.
Like apparently he was obsessed with cameras like the moment he stepped on set. Like he took them apart, he like wanted to know how they worked.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff where he's just, you can tell he's just playing with
The medium.
Yeah.
And pushing the boundaries of what it can do and what it's been able to do. Yeah.
But
And two, it's like you said, you can tell he like it feel like he's so good at it that it just feels casual. Like the thing you were
Yeah.
talking about where he's walking behind the guy and then the guy throws a cigarette and he just catches it and flips it into his mouth.
Yeah.
Like that had to have been
So hard.
yeah, and a lot of practice and everything, but he makes it look so casual. And it's like he was just that good, you know?
Yeah, exactly. There's two bits in here that really, like in the film, that really make me laugh. The first is after he's been shadowing the guy, and they get to the train station, and he turns around and like sees Buster, and Buster's like, "Yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be," and like gets onto the train, just as if like, you know, I'm catching this train. And
he's like, "Yeah, what do you want? I'm just getting on this
exactly.
train."
Yeah, exactly. And the other bit is like, it's so silly, but it's so funny. Is where like when he's playing the Sherlock Jr. character and he's in his house and he goes to the safe and he like unlocks the safe and opens it and it's just his front door.
Yeah. I had to rewind it because I was like, because it just happened so fast. And then all of a sudden all of a sudden it changes to the scene. Like before I knew it, he had walked through that safe and then which is the front door. And then all of a sudden he was on the roof of, you know, this building and you see landscapes in the background. And I had to rewind it because I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, where
It's been like 30 seconds. What just happened?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even the door scene, he's like pretending to get ready in the mirror. And then he walks like, and it's just like a doorway. He's just like, he's just facing a doorway that you just assume is a mirror, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the thing that it always blows my mind that when he jumps on the signal crossing and like drops into the car, that is it's just incredible to me. I don't know, you know, there's so many good stunts in this, but that is up there for like jaw dropping for me because there's no like it doesn't even look like he looks at the car. Like he sees the guy's in the car and then he runs over to the signal thing, just grabs on and drops.
Yeah.
Like there's just the timing and just like the trust that is going to be there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the planning and like, I mean, it's like, you know, like I said, he makes it look so casual, but you know that he meticulously planned out and thought out every possible scenario of accident or anything that could happen to make sure, you know, the timing and the weight and like all those things, to make it perfect, to make it that casual. But he just seems like someone who was just fearless. Like he had literally been being thrown around his whole life, been doing stunts his whole life, that he and because he has that deadpan thing, the stone face, like he has to do it with such confidence. He has to do it without, you know, being over the top or being like showing any sign of fright or goofiness or anything like that. That was what I was going to say earlier that I completely blanked on, was that I was reading there was one film he was in where it might have been when he was working with MGM, but the ending, the producers wanted him to smile. And he's like, okay, we can do a take where I smile, but it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And they did a test screening with audiences, and people were like booing
Oh, wow.
when he smiles at the end. So they took it out and replaced it with him not smiling because nobody wanted to see that. Like,
there's a few early shorts like before he kind of, I mean, he pretty much really quickly, very much like Chaplin, became this persona. You know, you can see it kind of like within 3 or 4 shorts, he's like the stone face. But in the first one, he like throws a sack of flour at like Arbuckle and it hits him and it cuts back and he is like rolling on the floor laughing. And I just like, I love seeing it because it's just so, it's just so like, you never get to see that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't think like he would have been as big if he was was one of those comedians that laughed all the time, I guess.
Yeah.
The stone face is like the thing, I think. But it's great to see little bits of it every now and again. But
yeah, for sure. Especially as a big fan, getting to see him emote a little more than usual, a different side of him.
But he could just look like surprised and I'd love it.
Yeah.
The end when he's taking the cues through the cinema of what to do with a girl. And then it cuts and they've got like a family, like 3 kids.
Yeah.
And just the look of like, oh God.
Yeah.
on his face is just so well done.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a moment that I wish, I like, obviously I feel like, it's funny, but it's like that is one moment that I wish I could hear an audience reaction to the very end, Because I just, I want to know like how big that laugh is. Was it a chuckle or was it like a burst of laughter in the theater? Was it an eruption? Like I'm really curious.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it was, like pretty big.
Yeah.
In terms of everything. But because I listened to like the commentary on the Blu-ray I've got, and they made a really good point that I hadn't really thought about. They were like, it's obviously like split into 2, this film. You get like the first half, which is like the real world, and then the second half, which is like the film world.
Right.
But the first half, the story is wrapped up before we even go into the film world, really. Like the girl goes and
she
finds out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they were saying that the reason was because they didn't want the audience to be worried about Buster while the other stuff was going on.
Yeah.
So they wanted that to be like, it's okay, he's not like, he's going to get the girl.
Yeah.
Now we're going to show you some incredible things.
Yeah. They didn't want to worry about like, he's going to be depressed when he wakes up.
Exactly. Yeah.
He's going to stay in this depression or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And apparently it's supposed to be like, so it was supposed to be like 6 reels and it ended up being like 4 and a half. So it was going to be a lot longer. But he like tested it with an audience and they didn't react as well to it. So he cut it down.
Wow.
And there's like some famous shots of him like buried under film reel. And that obviously was in the film but got cut. So there's so much in there that like maybe in the projection booth that they just like cut for time, they kept it very trim. But yeah, it could have been, 70 minutes, 80 minutes long quite easily, I think.
That's
but it
really
works.
interesting.
I mean, that 45 minutes is, like you said, it's tight. Like, there is no wasted time.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, it just moves. Yeah. And it's entertaining all the way through.
And he's so good at just playing with your perceptions, like you were talking about with the axe and the billiard ball or whatever it was. Just how he kind of kept missing it and like not quite sitting down. And then the banana skin at the beginning, like one of the classic tropes of comedy. The banana skin on the floor, trying to get the guy to come over to it.
Yeah.
And then he forgets about it and slips on it anyway because he gets so annoyed. I'm just like, it's just so good.
But it's his performance that like makes it so good. Because like that scene where he puts the banana peel on the ground and then he's holding the banana like tucked in on his side so the guy can't see it. And he's like, come in here. And the guy's like, what do you want? And he's like, come on. Like the way that he does that is just so great.
And the hand holding scene with the girl where like they touch and they both like flinch, and then she like slams her hand down, and so does he, and he like looks surprised at his own like aggression. It's so good.
Yeah. But like, yeah, man, he was just like that's what he was born to do, you know.
Yeah.
He knew his audience, you know what
Yeah.
I mean?
I tell you one thing that I did do this week. I joined the International Buster Keaton Society.
Oh shoot, what is that?
Yeah, it's like, I think it was like $35 for the year, and you just get like access to like the newsletter and stuff like that. But I was like, man, I love this man so much, I want to, pledge. And apparently, all the donations they spend on like, like getting artifacts and like memorabilia and kind of preserving it and stuff like that. So I was like, that's dope.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So how much do you know about Keaton in general? Like what his career was like after silent film, and what the rest of his career was like?
I think I know the basics. I mean, so he kind of made a lot of these really well-regarded silent films, and then poor decision decided to go to MGM for the money, and then lost pretty much creative control on all his stuff. I mean, he was like transitioning into talkies pretty well, I think, and then it just disintegrated. He kind of, lost a lot of money, ended up living in a caravan opposite a studio. I can't remember which studio it was. But then, like, towards the end, he started to get like life again, I guess. He did a lot of educational stuff, like educational videos, and
he did a lot of TV, right?
Yeah, there was a lot of like resurgence around him, I guess.
Yeah.
So he was just, picking it back up. But yeah, it's pretty sad, that just the whole MGM stuff and the fact that it just destroyed him, really. Like, it destroyed his creativity, and the studio just tried to control him, It's just a different era.
Yeah.
So,
but he from what I was reading, he did have like a resurgence in TV, which makes a lot of sense because he was so into new technology and stuff. And once TV came around, he was like, "Oh, this is my new thing," because he has a lot of TV credits. And then in, I guess, 1960, they gave him an honorary Oscar.
Yeah.
For his unique talents, which brought immortal comedies to the screen.
Could have said it a bit myself.
Yeah. I mean, he's just, so he did get to see, towards the end, because he died in 1966, he did get to see towards the end that he was going to be remembered as someone who had a huge impact on that industry. But I was also reading that he never considered himself like any kind of a genius or like an artist or anything. Like, anytime anyone tried to speak like highly of him, he didn't like. He just
shut it down.
Yeah. Which is crazy.
Yeah, I think like when you're good at something, I think it's hard to, I don't know, to credit yourself. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I feel like it was just natural. Like, he was just interested in the camera. He was interested in the screen, and this is just, like you said, it's been something he's been doing his whole life.
Yeah.
So he just put those two things together, but just nobody else was doing it the same way.
Yeah.
He's incredible. I just love everything he does. I think he's one of the greatest, silent film artists ever. He's just incredible.
Yeah. Well, I definitely want to watch a lot more of his stuff, and like, I think he's probably a good way to get into silent film.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Because then through him, you'll probably learn a lot about, Roscoe Arbuckle and people like that. So,
is there anyone that you can think of living today that compares to Keaton in any way? Obviously, you can't compare him as far as the whole package as like a stunt double and performer, But like as
Yeah.
far as like his, the whole stone face, like are there actors who kind of have that? I feel like Aubrey Plaza kind of
Yeah.
had, got famous off of basically the deadpan kind of.
Yeah, for sure. It's hard. I saw a review for Jackass 4, I guess it is, that's coming out.
Uh-huh.
And somebody said that, like, oh, it owes a lot of debt to Buster Keaton because it's like they're doing their own stunts or whatever. And I'm like, it's not really the same. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I understand where they're coming from, but I think there's a lot of, I don't know, there's a lot of kind of threads throughout cinema to this kind of
Yeah,
thing.
I mean, I think definitely, like, I mean, Jackass is like, let's watch these people get injured doing these stunts. Whereas, like, Buster Keaton was like, oh my God, he just did this stunt and casually walked away.
Yeah. After breaking his
How
neck.
the heck did he do that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously very different. I mean, I guess you could make a comparison to audiences or something like that, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. He's, it's hard to compare him because, like you said at the beginning of the show, just he feels like this was just made for him to be around at this time.
And there's nobody else that's like, I mean, for one thing, vaudeville isn't a thing anymore. I mean, there's nobody else that like could grow up in an environment like that and then become someone like that.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no platform for it anymore.
Yeah.
Do you know where he got the name Buster?
From Houdini, right?
Harry Houdini.
Yeah.
Yeah,
family friend.
Yeah, he performed, like he toured with the family, and apparently, when Buster Keaton was a kid, he like threw himself down some stairs to make Houdini laugh, and he was like, "That was a real Buster," and then they just called him Buster Keaton ever since.
Yeah, like I said, he's just, it's like cinema magic. It's just all these like cool little things.
Yeah.
That all culminate in this one person that you can just watch again and again. Doing incredible things,
Yeah.
And he's like, he did, I think, drink a lot and stuff like that. I mean, everybody at that age did, like.
Yeah, well, I mean, apparently his dad was an alcoholic too, and
who plays the girl's father in this?
Yeah, he's in the movie. Yeah, that's why it confused me at first because I was like, I think I saw that his dad was in this, and then I thought that the villain was his dad, and I was like, wait a minute, what?
Yeah.
Or I thought the villain was her dad or whatever. But anyway, I just got confused there for a second. But yeah, he plays his love interest's father.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Like, it's cool that, I mean, it's just crazy that this is like almost 100 years ago. And you learn the stories of all this stuff, and then it's just crazy that we can watch it. Like, just the fact that we can watch it, and it's like, oh, there's his dad right there,
Yeah.
Like,
exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's like, trying not to compare him to Charlie Chaplin too much, being the kid. Like Jackie Coogan, who plays the kid, his dad is in the film as well, and it's just all these things that just kind of like link and like come together, and it's. I think Keaton was just discovered in New York, just like walking down the street. Like, he saw someone that he knew that knew Fatty Arbuckle, and then they just get introduced. And just because he took a walk on the street, it's just insane. Like, turned into this. But yeah, I mean, everyone should go and try and find some Keaton to watch. Yeah. Because it is like watching the birth of cinema, basically, like on screen. It's incredible.
Yeah. If you do want to watch this movie, if you go to the Film Church Radio YouTube channel, I have created a public playlist.
Nice.
And I added it to it. So it's just FCR Watch List under Film Church Radio. And I'll probably add like the trailers and stuff for the other movies we reviewed.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Maybe some behind the scenes stuff. I don't know. We'll see. Just get on YouTube and subscribe to us.
Yeah, you never know what's going to come next.
Yeah, I pulled up a little bit of trivia about this movie. That's interesting. I mean, 1991, Sherlock Jr. was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant, which is great.
Yeah.
I know it's on a lot of like top
best.
lists of like the greatest movies ever made.
Yeah.
Obviously this is seen as an important film, and it's kind of interesting. We've had a few movies that are in the Library of Congress already. This is,
Yeah.
which is cool. I mean, we're on episode 10. Forgot to even mention that at the beginning. Can you believe it?
Crazy. No, I can't. It's brilliant. It's so good.
Let's see. The intertitle introducing Sherlock Jr.'s assistant contains some sharp humor. His assistant, Gillette, a gem who was ever ready in a bad scrape. Gillette, Gem, and Ever Ready were all razor manufacturers.
Nice.
Just like random, like little comedy.
Yeah.
Like, how can we make this as hilarious as possible?
Yeah, exactly. I just love how, like, in the opening scene, like, he comes into the theater and you can tell that it's Buster behind the mustache. But then in the other film, Buster just never gets that it's him with the mustache. Like, both times that we see him, like when he's on the bike and then when they get to the hideout and he's like hiding on the back of the car. He's wearing like a fake mustache and Buster just doesn't recognize it's him.
Yeah.
It's just those little things that just get me. I'm just like, it's the attention to detail.
Yeah.
You know, where they're like, it'd be funny if we did that.
Yeah. Yeah, so, man. It's like, that's it makes me wonder what those other scenes were that they cut out,
Yeah.
Like they must just not have been as tight as that.
Yeah.
Those little moments and stuff.
Yeah, it probably showed it to an audience and it just wasn't getting the same laughs as, him being thrown out of a cinema screen.
Yeah.
So, but still, I'd love to see him. I mean, any Buster is welcome. So,
the title card in the film within the film, Heart of Pearls, during which Buster Keaton falls asleep, informs us that it was produced by the Veronal Film Company, an appropriate name since Veronal was the first barbitrate sleeping pill ever marketed. And Sherlock Jr.'s assistant, Gillette, was named after William Gillette, the first actor to play Sherlock Holmes on stage.
Yeah, and I didn't really realize until, again, I heard it on the commentary, but Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote Sherlock, was still alive
at
this point.
Yeah.
Like, still putting out Sherlock Holmes mysteries. So, there's a lot of, I don't know, it just feels so strange.
Yeah.
That all these people were around at the same time, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, it just shows that also, the fact that he names a character after the first actor to play Sherlock Holmes on stage, which seems kind of random, but it just shows like his obvious like appreciation to other stage performers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And his knowledge. I mean, he wouldn't have had IMDb.
Yeah.
So I mean,
yeah. I mean, he must have seen it. He probably saw it on stage.
Well, we know that Buster was super loyal as a person. I mean, we talked a little bit about Roscoe Arbuckle and the trial that he went through in like 21 and 22.
Yeah.
If anyone that doesn't know, he got accused of murdering someone by rape, basically. And it went to like 3 trials. And there was never really any evidence. And in the end, he was acquitted. And the judge was like, I'm so sorry that we've dragged you through the mud for nothing, pretty much.
Yeah.
But I mean, Hollywood turned their back on Arbuckle, but Keaton didn't all the way through. He's like, he's innocent. I'm going to stand by him. Like, kind of not backhandedly, but through the back door, like hired him to write bits, like direct some of his shorts, keep him kind of working.
Yeah.
Arbuckle went, if you watch any Keaton shorts and you see the name either like William B. Goodrich like appear anywhere, that's Arbuckle. shortened down to "will be good," which is still like a little like nod to the audience, you know, I will be good kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's Arbuckle, but yeah, Keaton like stood by him and really tried to help him get back on his feet, and you know, I just love those things. I'm just like, he's obviously such a good guy and so loyal, and you know, had his heart in the right place.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Again, I forgot what I was gonna say. I always like have a new path to go down, and then I'm like, eh.
Yeah. Arbuckle deserves to be rediscovered, by the way. To everybody listening, you should try and find some.
You think so?
Yeah.
I've never. I don't think I've ever watched any of his stuff.
Yeah, everyone likes to kind of.
I mean, he's remembered for that one thing. Like, I know him for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Scandal or whatever.
Yeah,
you know?
Everybody kind of, that's the conversation that happens around him. But yeah, he was like I said, kind of contemporary Chaplin, really. You know, up there as one of the highest grossing film stars and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not as polished as Keaton's comedy, I don't think. It is very much like pie in the face.
Yeah.
You know, stuff like that. But it's still entertaining to watch. He's still a good screen presence.
Yeah.
That's my PSA for the.
How did you get into, like, when did you start getting into silent films? Did it happen when you were a kid, or like in film school, or?
I mean, I think I can trace it back to being a kid. Like, my dad used to show me Laurel and Hardy shorts when I was younger, you know.
Yeah.
And they were pretty much like mostly talky at that point, but you know, still that kind of humor transferred over.
Yeah.
And then it was Richard Attenborough's Chaplin that kind of I found it on TV like late one afternoon. Watched it and was like, oh, this guy's really interesting, you know. And I think I was like 15 at the time.
Yeah.
And then we went to London. I don't know if it was like that weekend or like later. I can't remember. But I bought Chaplin's autobiography. Just on a whim. I was like, it seemed really interesting. I want to read it. And I was just like flicking through it while we're walking around, and he mentions a pub that his father used to drink at, and it was like on the street that we were on. It was really weird.
Oh,
you know, I could like see weird. The pub while I was flicking through the book.
Yeah,
and it was just like, okay, this is kind of I believe a lot in like signs and stuff like that. I was like, okay, like I need to spend time looking at this guy, I guess.
Yeah.
So I plowed through it, and it's not an easy read. It's just a lot of like name dropping and you know, a lot of people I'd never heard of before. But then I just started watching all his films and then just like branched out from there, you know.
Yeah.
So it was Chaplin, really. Yeah.
They got you. That's cool.
Hooked, yeah. But there's so much more.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, you could spend forever.
Yeah, and I love the
in the silent era. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff out there, and there's a lot of stuff that got lost too, which is crazy. There's even more that was just lost forever.
Yeah, heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it'll be found at some point. I mean, not all of it, but yeah, there's a lot of collectors out there that tend not to tell people what they've got. So
yeah,
who knows? There might be some stuff out there that we haven't found yet, but fingers crossed. And there's a lot of great companies doing a lot of great work of restoring films as well.
Yeah.
So, thankfully, pretty much all of Keaton's, I think, are restored and available. So
nice.
Yeah. I mean, that's the good thing about Keaton and Chaplin is that they were so, like, reused, I guess.
Yeah.
That they just never dropped out of... Yeah, they never dropped out of circulation. They're always being shown somewhere.
Yeah.
So... The prints are always pretty good.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
We've talked twice as long as this movie. I'm just kidding. Not really. But we probably could.
Yeah. And that's just how good it is. I mean, I just want to go and watch it again.
Yeah.
So. And I'm glad you liked it, Branden. I mean, there's a lot like about like camera trickery and stuff like that I really wanted to like you to see kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I know that you know. So I'm glad that.
Yeah, there is a lot in this movie that is just, like I said, it's like, it felt like stuff I had never seen before, which is, It's
Yeah.
crazy because this is a movie that is 100 years old, and it's like,
Yeah.
and I'm sure it was the same for the audience, obviously back then. But like, even the car like that they break and then the car flies off the wheels and turns into a boat.
Yeah.
Like, just obviously we've seen cars drive on. I mean, they do that in James Bond, don't they? Cars
Yeah.
driving on water and stuff. But like, this is 1924. Like, no one had ever seen anything like that before.
Yeah.
And then the whole shots of him going into the screen was done so well.
Yeah.
It's
The cuts.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, how did they do that back then?
Yeah.
Like
It's
now it would just be CGI, but just like, it's just such good entertainment all the way through, mixed with these state of the art like special effects that people were just like amazed by, and I was amazed by.
Yeah.
100
It
years
still
later.
is jaw dropping. I mean, there's still a lot in it that I'm just like, I have no idea how they did that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So stands the test of time. I mean, I think in 100 years it'll still be watched and talked about in the same way. So it's good. Well, I think we've exhausted Sherlock Jr.
I think
Brad.
so.
Do you want to tell us what we're going to be watching next week?
Yes.
Sweet. What is it?
Lilies of the Field, 1963, starring Sidney Poitier.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, it's on Prime Video, so you guys should go watch
fantastic.
it. But this is the film that got him his Best Actor Oscar, the first Best Actor Oscar ever given to an African American.
How cool. I know that a few weeks ago I said I really wanted to kind of pick one of his films for us to talk about.
Yeah, me too.
So I'm so glad that you did. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah. I'm excited to watch it. I think I've only seen It Happened One Night.
Yeah.
I think that's the name of it. No, that's not the right movie.
Guess Who's Coming to Dinner?
No. Guess Who's Coming into Town? No. Oh, what is that movie? In the Heat of the Night.
Nice.
I knew it had something to do with the night.
Yeah.
The nighttime.
Dude, there's a lot of titles of films.
Yeah, there are. Yeah, In the Heat of the Night was really good.
Cool.
I watched it a couple of years ago.
Cool.
But
yeah, I haven't seen as many. I've seen, I think, the Defiant ones with Tony Curtis, because I do like Tony Curtis. And then Guess Who's Coming to Dinner?
Yeah.
I watched a few years ago and I absolutely loved it. It was so good. So I'm excited.
I've been wanting to watch it, but
yeah, I feel
I decided to pick the one that he won his Oscar for.
Yeah, that's a great choice. Yeah, I think that his roles that he chose were really good.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see. it. Yeah, good choice,
man.
Branden.
Sweet. So everybody go watch it on Prime Video before next week.
Yeah. And then leave us a comment. Tell us how you liked it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that brings us to the end of the show. You can find this show on Twitter and Instagram at Film Church Radio. And you can follow us individually on Letterboxd at Selman Scope and at Walker Lewis 3007. And that way you can keep up with what we've been watching throughout the week. We talk about it a little bit on here, but you can catch it in real time. We also have all of our back episodes streaming on all good podcast platforms. So please leave us a rating and a review so we know if you liked the film, if you didn't, and what you would pick for us to watch in the future. We're always welcome suggestions. There's a lot of films that aren't on our radar. So drop us a note. Let us know what you want us to watch. If we haven't seen it, we might pick it. But before we go completely, Branden, if I wanted to be a detective, do you have any rules that I should follow or any kind of tips?
I've got 7 tips for you.
Oh, awesome. Let me get my notebook out.
Could be done in any order.
Okay.
But first or later, you want to you want to search everybody. You want to look for clue.
Nice.
You want to examine all windows. You want to search for fingerprints. You want to shadow your man closely. You want to send for the police. And probably the most important thing is keep cool.
Nice. Awesome. Well, they seem like good clues for anyone wanting to be a detective.
Yeah, man. I mean,
it works.
you
as
do
this
them and you
film
become
shows.
a detective. It's magic.
That's right. Yeah. Just be cool.
Be cool. Keep cool.
Keep cool. Oh, we already are cool.
Yeah.
We just have to keep it. Okay,
Yeah,
sweet.
exactly. Don't do anything to mess it up.
Awesome. On
All
that
right,
note,
guys.
thank you all for listening. And we'll see you next Sunday.
Thank y'all. Keep cool.
Bye.
Bye.